So no slideshow presentation on. Yes. So, yes. We can finish just on the stage.
Somewhere else. So, yeah.
So we'll have y'all front and center.
That's the program I did for
Where are you based now? Where's the new job that you're at? Because I mean, I know I worked with you last year. You're obviously hanging out in the center of Denver.
Yeah.
Where are you? Oh, this is already. Oh, school. That's what this organization is already.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Space. Yeah.
And the tweaking was really hard. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's not my favorite.
Yeah, gotcha.
I know, I used to be pretty good at it. I've gotten to the point where I know how to like time my laundry for lunch and like, I've gotten pretty good at it. I wish I were less good at it. Like, I wish I had more of the benefits of it, like, you know, dinner was ready at 5:30 kind of thing, but I have issues.
I tried like during COVID, I mean, your dad and your my husband. Just to care about family stuff. And so I'm gonna be the guy who talks about kids. I tried to swap it.
It's full of people downstairs.
There's all of our workout stuff. And I was like,
That's true.
I would grab it. I'm impressed.
Or whether they're studying it.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so sorry I didn't mention that. Yeah, absolutely. Most of it, just in case y'all wanted, I don't think y'all ordered anyways. I don't think you ordered any, but we got extras just in case y'all want to take something down. So they're sitting over there and it says everything that's in them if you have any dietary restrictions, but yeah, feel free to take. If you wanted to.
I'm sorry, I must have missed that in the
Totally fine.
instructions.
No, totally fine. I placed it, I got a few extra things, so you'll see extras, they all say extras, so I'll just take some on your way out if you want to. Yeah, no problem. Please take them on your way out too. If you got them for people to eat, you gotta do all the That's so this last year. Yeah, so I worked with her last year and I did not know that was gonna be her last year in the show. So now Karen, did you briefly meet Karen yet? She was sitting right here. But yeah, no, Karen, yeah, she's the new associate director here. So she's running this show. And I'm doing background in history. But yeah, so things have been changing. It is. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I definitely miss Jennifer, but Jennifer just has like so much knowledge and but yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. I'll be finishing up with this job actually next month. So I'll be graduating, so I'm gonna take a break and then I'm gonna start a job. It's fun. Water policy is kind of like, it's kind of an area I love. I mean, I like policy, environmental policy is kind of like, I've been working with people who are passionate about the environment those are the people I love being around. That's kind of the work I want to do. Yeah, that's the hope. So I'm gonna take like a month to breathe. Because I've been in school for a long time. I did my undergrad now in master's school, so I'm like excited to take a second. And then I'll get in the field. Yeah. So I might see y'all around there. I know that that's your area. Oh, absolutely. I would love to. Yeah.
You heard about it.
Your experience is unbelievable, working with Justice Hobbs and then also being deputy of natural resources. It's pretty awesome. I'm a I would kind of love to do that one day.
Yeah.
But. Yeah.
Same thing I did last
I
time.
said, we had 3 months.
Little bits of.
Government. Forever, and then we had good money, right? Can't have all that,
Transitions in my career, how it. And then leadership and completely unplugged, which was what I got. So I like.
I don't want to see you. So come back, you know. Yeah. I probably be better.
People will enjoy that.
That's real money to be spent.
Fine.
So. Yeah, I think it's better to like.
Minutes.
I
just. Okay, so we've got.
The big impact is gonna be.
Okay. And I'm really excited that. People want Right, everyone, we're going we're gonna hear from our last speaker of the day.
I think it's gonna trickle down.
So please wrap up your conversation, open your chip bags now.
Oh, yeah, if you keep the chips now, apples especially.
Okay, so, well, I wanted to welcome Amy Beatty. She is the executive director of Keep It Colorado, and she was the former deputy attorney general for the Natural Resources and Environment section. She also previously served as a private water attorney and the director of the Colorado Water Trust, judicial clerk for the Honorable Gregory J. Hobbs of the Colorado Supreme Court. You guys remember hearing that name previously at all?
Probably a few times.
Yeah. And as the top natural resources and environmental lawyer for the state of Colorado. She has wide policy exposure throughout her career and obtained her undergraduate degree from Dartmouth College and her law degree from University of Denver Stern College of Law. So welcome, Amy.
Thanks.
We're excited to have her for our leadership challenge today.
Cool. Hi, everybody. How's your lunch? I'm almost gone. I'm at the tail end of your day, yes? Okay, so I would love it if we could just very quickly go around the room. I'd love to know who I'm talking to because I'm gonna tailor my thoughts and remarks to all of you. I've done this talk a few times in the past and I do it really unplugged. I do not have slides. I do not have an agenda. I don't have notes. I really am just here to sort of share a little bit about my career arc and then lessons I learned along the way. Some of them I learned them like in a really nice way and some of them are harder. And so, you know, I'll share along the way some highlights from each of the roles. And then we can leave some time at the end for questions, but I also don't want to find myself sort of talking at you the whole time. So interactive is also really fine with me. I love it. But let's start with, did you know I was coming your way or do you think I was going to run? Okay, so I'd love to hear who you are, what you do, and then what, just really quickly why you are interested in doing this, this training, this course.
Sure. So, my name is Tori and I am bringing you to the Colorado Water Center. So working with Karen Minton, as a water workforce program coordinator. Today's day 2. So I'm learning against the.
She's day 3. Oh, I was here with Molly. Molly and I just hired her away from somewhere that I worked for a little bit. And so she's on day 3 and we decided that we would do some onboarding in the car. So. Okay, Tori, day 2.
Yep.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
I'm Dennis Symes, and I've moved out here about 8 years ago from back east. I'm on the water board for the Fort Collins Local Water District. You know, it's interesting, just the scarcity of water versus the abundance of water that I came from, some interesting situations.
Cool.
Mark Driscoll, I'm a retired banker. I was a banking in the banking business over 40 years here. And was in and around and lent money on water and just want to learn more.
Excellent.
Think about what it is, huh?
Yeah, what it is. And how we get kicked back. Oh, no, don't worry about that.
I am Ethne Trice, and I run a limited family partnership with real estate investments. But why I'm in this class is because I am running for the state legislature.
Oh, congratulations.
My name's Ellen Holman, I'm utilities director for the town of Johnstown. We have a water and sewer utility, so it's primarily what I'm focusing.
That comes with my communications and marketing manager for Fort Collins Utilities. So I wanted to take this class because it's what I do all day, every day.
My name is Julie Jensen. I'm the CEO of the Greeley Realtor Association, and taking it a very pertinent to, what we do in terms of real estate, but then also very involved in the community and state. It's really looking forward and for us to be more involved at the municipal level.
I'm Tiffany Rocker, the person trying to bring company here in Fort Collins. And this, good water equals good beer, so we're looking more about that and getting as involved as we can be.
Karen Slaughter, Associate Director of the Colorado Water Center, and leading this program.
Excellent.
Mike Nellis with Bank of Colorado, just really a way to get more educated about some of the challenges facing our communities as we move forward.
Lauren Helmer, City of Greeley Stormwater Quality Administrator, oversee the city's MS4 stormwater quality permit. And I am also a board member with the Big Thompson Watershed Coalition, so kind of twofold, but kind of from both positions, just here to learn more for both of my positions and grow in the community and
Love it.
Laura Quattrini, Executive Director with the Big Thompson Watershed Coalition. Just wanting to learn what the issues are in northern Colorado and who the players are, who all the stakeholders are.
Hey, Jason Maxey with Weld County. I'm the director for the oil and gas department for the county. And so water is an integral part to oil and gas development in the upstream side of things. And I come from a farming family, and so I still live on a small farm and raise some animals, and so it's very integral to that as well. And so I'm running because I want to, like a lot of people want to learn more, but I'm also running for county commissioner. And so trying to get as educated as I can on all the water issues and info that is out there.
Hey, I too covered 2 hats, David Katz, senior broker at Waypoint Real Estate, your commercial real estate firm. Within that, I do a lot of development land and the water, so I broker land and water. The other hat I wear is I'm the current chair of the Fort Collins Planning and Zoning Commission. So I came here to learn more about water in general, to be able to speak the language and kind of balance the ag perspective, which I had less experience with versus, always looking at it from a development drinking water perspective.
I'm Jess Humphries. I'm the Administrative Services Director for the town of Windsor. Part of my duties is to communicate all things for the town. I have a communication staff underneath me, but I also lead our utility rate studies every year. So I'm one piece of the puzzle. It's always fun, and we're obviously growing. The community is growing, and we believe in collaborations.
Cool. A lot of local government, some candidates, and some business and banking. It's a great mix of people, and I've come to expect such an awesome mix of people from this training. So you didn't disappoint. I love it. So I am an East Coast kiddo. I'm 4th generation to a farm in Maine. My grandfather and my mom used to grow corn, and then they would drive it around in the motorboat on our lake and sell it to people. It was not the primary business for my family, but it was certainly something that my family thought was pretty darn fun. My kiddo is now 5th generation to that farm. So we've had the same dirt in our family for a really long time and have been through sort of all of the things that you could imagine when there is land ownership that makes it sort of passes itself down from family member to family member to family member, including every layer. Should we sell it? Should we sell it? Can we afford to keep it? And then but I grew up in New York City, so I had this sort of two chambers of my heart, this very bucolic rural Maine farm and a very urban life. And, I had a friend in college who fell in love with the West, and when we graduated, I was sort of slow to really figure out what I wanted to do, and she called and said, we're gonna go to Colorado, and I said, okay. And so I'm going to date myself. I drove out here with CDs. There were no cell phones at the time, so there was a caravan of four of us, two of my closest friends from college and my best friend from high school, and in four cars. And I had a trailer with Raggedy Ann on the side, U-Haul with Raggedy Ann on the side, and we communicated with each other with CDs. And rolled into Boulder, and two of us are still here, and one went to California and one went immediately back to New York. But so three of us sort of stayed Western and one went back east. And then I fell deeply in love with water in the West, fishing and rafting, and the way that you can lose time on a river that you just can't in other places. It goes by in a way that is so healing and delightful. And so when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, I actually opened, and I'm also going to date myself, I opened an environmental jobs newsletter that arrived at the house where I was staying. There was no internet and no listservs and no job boards or any of those things. Like you unstapled the staple and opened the thing. And in it were all these incredible jobs that required a law degree, but they didn't look very traditional lawyer. And I was not traditional lawyer looking either at the time. And so I started to really look deeply into law school and thinking that maybe instead of doing what I thought I was going to do, which was going to outdoor education, I would keep sleeping in a sleeping bag as my avocation and make my vocation protecting the places that were important to me. But I sort of majored in beer in college. And so I had to be really sure that law school was going to be okay. And so I went and I did a sort of second undergraduate and graduate degree coursework at CU, just to see if my brain still worked, to see if I cared. And I absolutely loved it. And while I was there, I ended up creating this emphasis in Western water. I took a geography class, I took a civil engineering class, I took a law class taught by Jim Corbridge that was for non-lawyers, all in water. And then I literally emerged from that program a water lawyer to be. So, and it was really cool because those layers of the education, the geography, the sociology, the policy, the law, the engineering, all come together in this field of water in a way that I think is totally rad and really different and pretty revolutionary. So for those of you who are running, good for you for realizing that you need to be here to know more, because when you talk about water in Colorado, nobody stays high level. Everybody wants to just go straight down into the weeds. So the more you can know about water, the more helpful it's going to be. If we're out talking to people, and it is a Colorado conversation. So, but I fell deeply in love with water, and then I applied to law school, and I ended up going to DU, and I got onto the DU Water Law Review, Volume 1, Issue 1. So a group of intrepid students got together and said we should have a law review dedicated to water in the West in our country, and formed that the year before I arrived. And then the year I arrived, I wrote on as a first-year law student, and then I was managing editor my second year and editor-in-chief my third year. I did all water all the time in law school, and I graduated with an emphasis in environmental law, which I didn't even know the school had. I just was so focused on environmental law that I rolled out of there with something that people do with great intention, totally accidentally. And that the water law focus in law school was wonderful because it meant that I was meeting people in the community. I had jobs during the summer. And then I had relationships with the authors who were writing articles for the Water Law Review and our advisory board. So I'm going to pause here and say that was the very sort of first time that I realized how much relationships matter. Relationships are always going to be your bread and butter. So you may leave a job and want to pull the pin and throw the grenade on your way out, don't. Because you never know when you're gonna need those relationships later. It doesn't matter if you're mad, it doesn't matter if you're frustrated, it doesn't matter if they really failed. Leave with grace, communicate with the people around you with grace. Always remember that your relationships are your bread and butter. We live in a society where people like the things that are comfortable and familiar to them. So, I just want to encourage you to remember how important that is in everything that you do at every point in your career. That is like leadership skill, sort of number one. Relationships are always front and center. They can open doors and they can absolutely slam them shut and lock them. So I had this absolutely all-star advisory board. It included a Colorado Supreme Court justice. It included lawyers for the state of Colorado and interstate water negotiations. It included really well-known lawyers working on intrastate water matters who run some of the cases that were in my water law textbook. So it was a great opportunity. And I was also editing articles for these attorneys and professionals, and that's your bread and butter as a lawyer. So I happened to be working on an article with Greg Hobbs, the Colorado Supreme Court justice, who's considered the water justice. And neither one of us really remembers how this happened, but we think he said to me, "This is what I do with my law clerks." And this is a blast. I was editing an article for him in my third year of law school, and he said, "I think you should apply to clerk for me." And as Colorado Supreme Court justice, I didn't think I wanted to clerk, so I hadn't applied. You usually apply in your second year. I was in my third year. I'd sort of let that ship sail. But when a Colorado Supreme Court justice says to you, "I think you should apply to clerk for me," you don't not do it. And he's also the rascaliest, most unassuming, most delightful human being you could possibly know. And so the idea of being around that energy all day long was totally appealing to you. So how many of you actually had an opportunity to meet him ever? I asked this the last time I was here too, and it was nobody also. He's a really spectacular and special and impy human being, and everyone was equal. Everyone was even in his world. He invited me to apply to clerk for him, and then he interviewed me at Pint's Pub in downtown Denver over a burger and a beer and offered me the clerkship on the porch. I had a year to fill between the clerkship and graduating from law school, so I was also in a student legal clinic. And I was working with a single client in this student legal clinic. I was actually working on coal bed methane. So this was a really long time ago when people were like, "Coal bed what?" It was absolutely this brand new gas play in the Powder River Basin, and there were really serious water implications from this gas development. And our client was a nonprofit conservation organization in Wyoming that was really trying to figure out how to encourage responsible coal bed methane development in Wyoming. So, Wyoming was basically doors open for business, and this organization's job was really to try and layer in sort of more responsible development. And because I had the water background, they were a natural client for me. And the day that I called them to say, "I have a year between law school and clerking for Greg Hobbs," was the day after they received a year-long grant to fund someone to do exactly what I was doing for them. And they were going to call me to ask me if I wanted to come and work for them. So another U-Haul in my life. I loaded what little things I owned through law school, and I moved to Wyoming, and I took a year-long job in Wyoming as a community organizer and a special projects attorney for this Wyoming conservation organization working on the intersection between water and this gas development. So I guess lesson from that number 2 is that was a total happy accident. I loved my client. I loved working for them. I worked really hard. There was no job on the horizon. And I managed to just, because I cared so much, shoehorn myself into an opportunity that I would not otherwise have had. So this, and I also took risk. There aren't a lot of people who roll out of law school in law school debt who want to work for $23,000 a year, which was my salary at that Wyoming nonprofit organization, or can, And also risk taking time off to have a year and then another year-long job and then sort of postpone your, finding your career path. But I had some pretty high risk tolerance, single, dog, like stuff that fit in a tiny U-Haul. And so it just made sense to me that it all worked. Felt really good for me. So I rolled up to Wyoming and then I was organizing as a we've got some political folks in here. So, and I was also a political appointee for a Democratic Attorney General. So I'm on Team Dem. And I had this sort of young, at the time, liberal looking lawyer from Denver rolling into this very deeply rural red community in Wyoming as a community organizer, never having done that kind of work before in my life. And you learn very quickly that the little lady from Denver doesn't come up and tell folks what's the what, which is a quote from someone. We thought you were going to come in here and tell us what's the what. I rolled in and I just listened. And we were working in places where it was, you drive off the highway and then you drive 50 minutes on a dirt road in order to get to the homestead. And you've also driven 50 minutes from any kind of commerce. So that is, if you add that all together, that is a melted pint of ice cream. And so wherever I went when I was working in this community, I would listen to what people's needs were. And ice cream was kind of this precious commodity. There was no Amazon, there was no food delivery there. And people would drive around with coolers in their car because they happened to roll into town. And so when I would organize meetings, I would just come with a cooler full of ice cream and open it up. And then people would be like, oh my God, she totally knows us. So another lesson, really important lesson here is you will be so surprised what people tell you if you just stop talking. In this community, we were able to build some trust. We were looking at, we were working with landowners on their surface use agreements. We had really done a kind of a good job putting a program together. I only had a year. And then I came and I clerked for Justice Hobbs. And it was really special. And I keep thinking, there are a few jobs I would go back to tomorrow. And clerking for him is one of them. I worked in the Boulder bookstore too, and that place was so fun. But I rolled back into town and I clerked for Justice Hobbs. And that was an opportunity and he took this role so seriously. He loved it every day. In fact, there is a justice on the Colorado Supreme Court who says, every day I channel Greg Hobbs and say to myself that I need to love this job as much as he did. He was the kind of person where, he moved from the old courthouse to the new courthouse. And I don't know if you all knew the old building, but it was like this totally 80s, maybe earlier, upside. It was a staple. It looked like this and it was ugly and it was awful. And the justices' chambers were tiny and cramped and then they built this beautiful sort of, building for a century kind of building. And it was under construction for quite some time. And the justices were already moved into it while it was under construction. And Greg loved to tour people. And because he is the kindest and loveliest person who treats everyone around him like they are people who have meaningful things to share and are worthy of anyone's attention. He knew the folks that were working on the punch list on the construction. So he would stop and he'd stop and introduce the people he was touring to the, hard hat wearing construction workers. And when I came and toured with him, one of them rolled away and was like, that's the guy that I was talking about. He sits up there. And he was showing us the Supreme Court courtroom. And so there was this sort of reverence where he just treated everybody like everyone was in the same boat, that he was in their boat, that, no matter what, no socioeconomic status, nothing, education, nothing mattered to him, just he loved people. And so another thing to keep in mind is that if you approach everything you do, a lot of you are in leadership roles and you will it sounds like you're sort of poised to accumulate more responsibility, and with that also comes more power and influence. And if you don't put that in front, he just never put it in front. It was always people first. And so you will create magic with the people around you if you don't wield the influence and leadership and authority and gravitas and power that you have. They know. He had an honorarium. He was Justice Gregory J. Hobbs Jr. of the Colorado Supreme Court, and he rolled with that title. He didn't have to beat people over the head with it. In fact, it was the coolest thing. He officiated my wedding, and all of my friends at my wedding were like, he was totally our favorite guest at the wedding. He was up dancing late night. He loved bluegrass, you know, and they just kept saying, I can't believe he's a Colorado Supreme Court justice. So as you are growing into your, you know, career, please remember that humility and treating people with respect and kindness and dignity, it will always rule the day. And they will remember that more than they will remember anything else. So I clerked for the judge, and he said to me, you can go do that flaky environmental thing you want to do later, but right now you're going to learn how to be a good lawyer. So, you know, it was the kind of advice that you don't love, but you do anyway. And so I was in private practice for about 5 years, and it was like wearing an itchy sweater to work every day. I didn't love it, but I put my heart into it as much as I could. It was during that time that I realized that I am mission driven, and that I have a muse when I care deeply about what I'm doing. I was never going to be able to just produce a widget. I had to be mission driven. And so I didn't last very long in private practice, but I had great relationships with folks that I worked with. And I ended up walking out the door in November of 2007 to take on a nonprofit organization that had crashed on the rocks. And Josh, who just spoke to you, is now the staff attorney of that organization. And it's a team of 10 people, and it works all over the state, and it does totally rad and totally cool things. I had a fabulous board of directors, and that was another one of those risk situations where I was in partner discussions with my law firm. This opportunity opened up, and I thought, I can take everything I'm doing for private clients and have my clients be rivers and fish. Yes, please. So, and then I was there for 10 years. So we grew from me and my black lab going to my office sublet from the Nature Conservancy in downtown Denver to a team of 10. And there's like layered along the way in those 10 years were all the things I've told you, put other people for, I had this title, executive director of the Colorado Water Trust, and I was like young at the time. And too young probably for, you know, a fancy title. And so, you know, you put relationships first, you put people first, you try things on for size, and there's like a risk thing built in here too, which is, you know, I share this with friends of mine who are municipal water providers, and they're like, no. I'll sit on a panel with friends who are municipal water providers. And they're like, we don't do risk. And I'm like, you do risk all the time. You just don't realize it. But risk is cool. Risk is a way to figure out what works, figure out what doesn't work. And sometimes what doesn't work is better and a better lesson. It's like when you're in HR and you're managing people and they're all really easy to manage. You don't learn to be a good manager then. You learn to be a good manager when it's the total shit show. And you're like, oh my God, what do I do about this person? And then you learn how to manage. So risk is awesome, and failing is fabulous. As long as you have really insulated the project and the consequences, and you really thought through and you communicated really well, risk is rad. So I just also want to encourage all of you to lean into risk, because all across the sort of pieces of my career, risk was what made the next step even better, programmatically, for my career, for my employees, whatever it was. Throwing someone into a job that they didn't feel like they were ready for because I knew they were ready. You know, risk is rad. So weave that into your DNA as a leader, and just make sure that you do it right? Like, don't run around like pulling out, you know, all of the safety valves for everything. Like, calculated risk is rad. So I take on this nonprofit organization in November of 2007, never having raised $1 in my life, right before the Great Recession. Never having managed an employee, and like literally with this title and this organization that was considering closing its doors and thinking like, okay, well, it's only up from here. The very first thing I did was leadership training. So, and I don't have to tell that to all of you because you all are here, you're learning leadership, you're learning substantive water stuff. So rad. But what I will tell you is, you know, we as lawyers have to do continuing legal education. You don't get to spike the football and be the best lawyer ever and do your end zone dance and then not ever have to learn anything else. This is a world in which continuing to keep your ear to the ground and feel the sand shifting under your feet in a leadership role is going to be really important. So don't stop with your leadership training. So I told you, I walked in the door in 2007 and 2008. I did the Colorado Foundation at the time for Water Education's Water Leader Training Program. So in 2008, I did that. I did 2 more leadership training programs in my 10 years at that organization. Some of them used the same assessments. I did Myers-Briggs like 3 times. Turns out I'm extroverted-ish. So keep leaning into leadership training because the world is changing. I worked with Molly, who for about 2 months at Colorado Legal Services in their housing unit, doing eviction defense work, trying to keep people from being put out on the street. And oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. Hold on, pulling it back together again.
The world is evolving.
Say that again.
You put people on the street, you know, you got in the street.
Keeping your ear to the ground. Anyway. But that was also a weird bank shot for me because I was a natural resources lawyer and I had a friend that I had worked with who had a leadership gap. And I was actually taking a little bit of time off from work. And so I went and I was a housing lawyer for 2 months. That was based on a relationship. That was based on a need. It was actually incredibly cool. It could even have been a career turn for me because I loved the work. It was like being an ER lawyer, like really fast moving, front lines, meeting with clients, and having their stuff turn really quickly. I ran for office. I ran for the Colorado House of Representatives. Are you running for Jenny Arndt's seat?
52.
Yeah.
Kathy Kirsty.
Yeah, okay. And I lost in the primary. And after I lost in a primary, I had just been a working stiff forever. And I said to my husband, I have to stop moving. And so risk again, but I had met a ton of people out on the campaign trail, one of whom was Phil Weiser, and he won his race for Attorney General. And then I was appointed to his leadership team. So I was the top natural resources and environmental lawyer for the state of Colorado for 4 years. 1 term of that was enough. If you aren't burned out after a term, you're not doing it right. And so it was water quality, air quality, hazardous waste, solid waste, avalanches, mining, oil and gas, water rights. So the state engineer, the Colorado Water Conservation Board, all clients of my team. So I oversaw a team of 80 people, 65 lawyers and 15 administrative professionals. And that was after having been at the Colorado Water Trust, which I was like proud of at 10. So it was a huge stretch in skills and leadership style. Do not also in your career make the assumption that you can translate the things that worked in one setting to the things that are needed in another setting, because managing a team of 10 is very intimate and very different from managing a team of 80. And the tools are totally different. If I send an email to a team of 4 people, they're gonna be like, why couldn't we just have had a conversation about this? But I need to communicate with 80 people right away about crises like COVID, George Floyd, all of that was happening while I was in my role. And you realize that communicating with people is critically important, but the tools you use are really different. So scale your approach to what is in front of you. And then I worked with Molly at Colorado Legal Services for a couple of months, supporting a friend of mine who just taken over the executive director position there, and then got this job working for Keep It Colorado. In my job working in water for about 20 years, you can't work in water and not touch land. you can't touch land and not touch water. And so I had lots of relationships in the land conservation community and ended up getting this pretty dreamy job where I run the coalition for all of the state's land trusts. So all of the state's land trusts and public agencies that use conservation easements as tools are members of this organization. And this is really the sort of like, it layers in all of my experience, the political, we're running a bill right now. Policy, you've got to know how to, answer questions about the intersection between renewables and land conservation, water and land conservation, staff management, like communications, organization, structure, kind of took all the pieces of my career and layered them into this one role, which is a total delight. So I just, and that's like, those are a series of very weird jobs for somebody who's a lawyer. Most people are like, oh yeah, I worked in this law firm and then I moved to this law firm and they made me partner. I like couldn't, that wasn't the path for me. Those folks were like the people on the moving walkway at the airport who had their rolly bags perfectly packed with their toiletries in a Ziploc with a perfect less than 4 ounces. And I'm the kid who's like flying down the concourse with my bag open, with stuff flying out. That's sort of how my law career has felt. It's been a little bit messy and a little all over the place, but crazy fun. And I learned lessons every step of the way, bad ones and good ones. And I'm just pleased that you all are leaning into leadership and learning and also the substance around water. It's so important in Colorado to know how it works.
Some question. I have a question. Can you talk about, women, even today, in diversity in general, in law and water law is still kind of an issue, What was it like for you to be a woman going into water law during that time?
Glenn Porzak ran, I was at Porzak, Branning and Rashawn at my first law firm after I clerked for Justice Hobbs. And he gave me a lot of responsibility, I think, to set me up to fail, but I'm still kind of trying to process that therapy, right? Anyway, so I was actually the lead negotiator for a project that we were working on. We had 2 different sides on the other side, plus us all trying to negotiate something. And I walked into the room, I was the only woman, I was the youngest by 15 years. And there came a point where somebody busted out a map and everyone wanted copies of the map and they gave it to me to go and copy the map. And I was the lead negotiator. I was like, you copy your own map. I didn't say that, but at that time, and then I would also, this is irreverent, but I'm going to tell you anyway, I've been going to Water Congress forever, and Water Congress used to be a sea of men. And when I first got I had an iPhone and you could take the picture, I would hold the picture up above the back of the room and it was like lots of bald heads. And like.
Careful. Sir Boulder.
But I just, it was really, really male dominated. And so it was pretty hard. The thing that I feel so fortunate about is I had really amazing champions. I had Justice Hobbs. I had a law professor at DU who was just, the 2 of them were sort of like my board of directors. They were spectacular. And then the Water Trust Board of Directors was this group of incredibly influential and connected water leaders, and they all just helped elevate me. So I guess also keep in mind to lift as you rise. So as you are rising, lean back down and just consider how you can bring people along with you. I've had that sort of ethic in my career, my entire career. I have lots of mentees, almost entirely women, because they're just unique challenges around parenting and being female in a really male-dominated sector of law and law in general. Many more stories. I feel like I talked too long. I promised myself I wouldn't.
So we've talked a lot in this class about collaboration or the need for more collaboration on the state level or even on the regional level for water. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of collaboration. There's this saying, if you want to move fast, go alone. If you want to move well, go together. Collaboration is absolutely essential if there is overlap in the Venn diagram. Sometimes collaboration is an arranged marriage where you haven't figured out why you're collaborating. You can't start there. There has to be overlap in the Venn diagram for the collaboration to work. That's like the place where everyone has skin in the game. I think collaboration is if you named the top 10 things that happened in the water community that were revolutionary, every one of them was some big collaborative thing that probably took 10 years and the wheels came off the cart like 8 times. There were clusters and, but eventually you get to the place where when you pull it all together, those solutions they're durable, they have buy-in, people are invested. So I'm a huge fan of collaboration, and that's usually in some of my examples along the way. I didn't do notes, so I missed it. But if I were gonna make a list, that's definitely on the list. Also, perspective. Collaboration helps you see, you get blind spots. I think a lot about things like, I take for granted the fact that I have a license, like a driver's license in my pocket. And so if I have to go to a state park and they ask to see my license, I just give them my license. Why do you need to ask for a license to go see a state park, right? You have blind spots. But if there are people who are helping advise Colorado Parks and Wildlife about what information they actually want when people are coming to parks, they may not need to see a license, right? So people help you make better decisions, but if everyone has the same lived experience, you can't diversify your perspective. You can't see the things you can't see, right? So collaboration also brings, that's how you get that, creative problem solving and durability.
I really appreciate your comment about risk being rad. This past couple of years, I mentioned, I gave a presentation at before you came, and it was myself and another person, my only employee when I first started a couple of years ago, and we've since hired a couple more people, and
Congratulations.
and, just really trying to make more happen. None of us went to school for fire recovery work, which is what we're working on. My forester, she did get a forestry degree, and my stream restoration guy does have a wetland restoration degree. But we, as a program, we don't know what we have the capacity to handle. And so last year, we just went balls to the walls and, took on as much as we thought we could, which is way more than what we actually could accomplish. And so we were super stressed out last fall, and I think everyone was ready to bail and jump ship at that point. But I did annual evaluations at the end of the year, and I really focused on that growth mindset.
Yeah.
Of, yes, we took a risk to take a lot on, we did great, we actually accomplished a lot, but it was at the disservice to our mental health, I guess. So, we're learning from this. So that, I like that, you need to take risks to be able to succeed.
Yeah.
And learn from it.
And also to lean into crisis, it just, if you choose not to, you will always regret what you didn't do. So leaning into crisis is great. Crisis also creates so much fertility around opportunity.
That's what, the fire, as much as I would rather not have had a fire, but the funding from it allowed me to actually hire more staff and kickstart our new programs.
Cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's give a round of applause. Announcements. So again, for those who are doing book reports, thank you so much. Remember, that's next month. April 10th is our meeting date, I believe. April 2nd, Northern Water Symposium. April 2nd and 3rd, Water Workforce Summit. May 9th is the NUSA / Morning Fresh Dairy Tour. You should all have forms, drop those off with Benton
Drop
or
them off right here with me.
email them to him. And then we will be setting up a later part of May graduation date, hopefully very soon. So stay tuned for that so we can get on your calendar. It's typically like 2-hour in the evening type of thing at a wine green. It's very nice. That's all I have. Thank you all, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Good in your homework.
Thank you for coming. Oh, no.